Bumblebee viewer. Today I'll be telling you how by chopping through the jungle, riding camels through the desert, or hiking mountainous slopes, archaeologists and historians can and will do it all to reach the truth of these top 10 ancient cultures lost to time. Number 10 being the Silla, which was one of the longest standing royal dynasties ever, ruling over most of the Korean peninsula between 57 BC and 935 AD. And they were founded by the monarch Cahokia, the first occasion in history that the Korean peninsula had been unified under indigenous leadership. Legend says he was hatched from a mysterious egg in the forest and married a queen born from the ribs of a dragon. Don't know if all that is true, but over time, the Silla culture developed into a centralized hierarchical society with a wealthy aristocratic class. Though human remains from the Silla people are rare, archaeologists have unearthed a variety of artifacts, from gold and garnet daggers to cast iron Buddhas to jade jewelry, among other examples now all held at the Gyeongju National Museum in South Korea. But as mentioned, for such a large society, they seemingly left next to no burials for archaeologists to study. The assumption is made that maybe they were a society of cremation and scattering ash, but we wouldn't exactly find the evidence of that, would we? One Silla burial discovery gave researchers a little insight into their ethnic and cultural being, however. The intact bones of a woman who lived to be in her late 30s were found in 2013 near the historic capital of the city, in modern-day's Gyeongju. An analysis of the woman's bones revealed that she was likely a vegetarian who ate a heavy diet in rice, potatoes, or wheat, but oddly, she also had an elongated skull. From documented history, apparently, after more than 100 years of peace, the Silla kingdom was torn apart in the 9th century by conflicts amongst the aristocracy and peasants uprising. By 935, they were overthrown and largely erased. For number 9, we'll dive into the Noks in Nigeria. The mysterious and little-known culture lasted from 1000 BC to 300 AD and was discovered by complete accident during a tin mining operation in 1928 in what is today the southern part of the Kaduna state in central Nigeria. Miners had uncovered a terracotta head and presented it to the local archaeologists, starting the hunt for the source of the sculpture. Since then, other elaborate terracotta sculptures have emerged, including depictions of people wearing jewelry, headdresses, and carrying batons and flails, symbols of authority also seen in an ancient Egyptian art. But the Noks still steal the title of the earliest producers of life-size terracotta in the sub-Sahara. Contributing to the mystery surrounding them is the fact that their artifacts have often been stolen from their found location without an archaeological analysis or documentation first, as learned unfortunately in 2012 when the United States returned a mountain of Nok figures to Nigeria after they were stolen from Nigeria's National Museum and smuggled into the US. One last thing about the Noks before we move on, they skip right over the Metal Ages right to iron. Try and deep that knowledge, because while it may sound like nothing from our standpoint, these folks were literally more advanced than the rest of the world by literally thousands of years in the development of metalwork. Their metalworking techniques included casting, forging, and welding, which allowed them to produce objects of various sizes and complexities. Yet it didn't stop them from vanishing without a trace, a mystery we still try to unravel today. Do you enjoy unraveling mysteries, or at least hearing about them? Well, that's what we do on Bumblebee, so maybe take a second to subscribe to the Hive to hear more. Next up, number 8 is Cahokia. From 700 CE until deadly colonization, the American Southeast and Mid-Continent was known as the Mississippians. Around 1200 years ago, they established Cahokia as a river valley community near modern-day St. Louis, Missouri in the United States. Although not as large as other lost civilizations on the list, it was estimated to have a population of around 20 to 40,000 people, making it the largest known ancient site that was north of Mexico. Because its location near several rivers, Cahokia was used as a trading center within the American Midwest. Thus why relics that did not belong to them show up in their territory, and relics that belonged to them show up in other people's territory. Estimated at 6 square miles, Cahokia featured massive central plazas, earthen pyramids, and wood structures similar in shape to Stonehenge that were used to track the stars. There were also ceremonial and burial mounds across the region, approximately 120 of them, one of which was over 100 feet tall. They required 14 million baskets of dirt to create. According to experts, the population was washed out, literally, by a massive flood sometime around 1200 AD. Well, this is the most popular hypothesis. Others presented that maybe their people overextended their resources, or were wiped out by the Little Ice Age, or died from smallpox that traveled faster than the European colonizers did. Talked about these guys in a recent video, so let's circle back to the Olmecs, which will be number 7. This civilization was located along the Gulf of Mexico around 1100 BC. Named the Olmecs by the Aztecs, who on this channel we call their proper name the Mexicas, because the Olmecs lived in the Olmen, the land of rubber. The Olmecs were primarily known for their architecture, which included buildings, irrigation and aqueduct systems, apartment structures, and big head statues. Unfortunately, the Olmec civilization fell into decline around 400 BC. Both of its major cities were essentially abandoned, leaving their many buildings, statues, and other artifacts behind. Although not much evidence remains regarding the Olmecs, experts believe that a natural disaster such as drought or volcanic eruption must have caused a drastic loss in their crops. The Olmecs may have also overexploited their natural resources, which would have contributed to any food loss they may have experienced. Others say that there might have been tensions between them and other local communities, which resulted in bloodshed. But if you've seen the recent video, The Top 10 Epic Gods from Ancient Olmec Mythology, you knew they had a healthy trade established with neighboring communities, so it really is hard to say. This next culture is so obscure, archaeologists named it the Bell Beakers. I call it number 6. The artifact in particular they earned their name from are clayware drinking vessels shaped like upside-down bells. However, they also left behind copper artifacts and a cemetery of 154 graves, but I guess neither of those were name-worthy for an entire civilization. These graves were found in the Czech Republic, however, and the Bell Beakers culture is widely dispersed throughout the entirety of Western Europe, from Iberia stretching eastwards to the Danubian plains, then northward to the islands of Great Britain and Ireland. But then they're also present on the islands of Sardinia and Sicily and the coastal areas of northwest Africa. See, that's the problem. This culture is a little too dispersed, and it started a bit of debate amongst the archaeology history community as a result. Thus, why the Bell Beakers are technically classified as an archaeology culture, which is defined as similar artifacts and features from a specific time frame and within a consistent geographical area. The term has largely fallen out of favor as it's been increasingly realized that similar material goods do not necessarily correspond to a single society, nor dissimilar material goods necessarily can indicate separate societies. A study from 2018 found the Bell Beaker was associated with genetically diverse populations. So technically speaking, this may not have been a culture that dispersed, but rather a type of item made by multiple cultures that all happen to do so around 2800 BCE to 1800 BCE. One distinct discovery made, however, is that Bell Beakers, if they were their own peoples and not one of the other many existing groups at the time, were responsible for some of the construction at Stonehenge. On to number 5, we venture into Nia. So this community was once settled in the desolate Taklamakan desert of the Xinjiang province of China, placing it smack dab in the thriving Silk Road. For the past 2 centuries since it was discovered, archaeologists have found countless artifacts and treasures from the once massive oasis, amongst the shattered remains of wooden homes and temples. Irrigation systems delegated water to crops, and in the center of town was a 20-foot-high Buddhist shrine made of sun-dried mud bricks. Many groups traveled the Silk Road, from wealthy merchants to religious pilgrimages to scholars and scientists, and as a result, Nia's community's culture blended with those of India, Persia, and Macedonia. That's right, Macedonia. According to scholars, Nia's population included soldiers of Alexander the Great's army, who would have reached this settlement during the 4th century BCE. Legends say that one of Alexander's expeditionary forces disappeared in this region, but now historians are wondering if they were a collective of men that chose to settle, which might account for the Hellenistic style of furniture found in Nia by the British explorer Ariel Steen in 901. So what happened in Nia? Well, apparently their people left in some massive rush. Some scholars believe that they left so fast they even left their dogs tied up in front of their dwellings, but there's no evidence of what may have occurred. As the years passed, the city was slowly reclaimed by nature and the desert to be rediscovered in 1901. Circling back to the idea of confirmed, not confirmed cultures, the number 4 will be the Turquoise Mountain. Dia al-Din Muhammad, King of Kings, had built an unimaginable kingdom in the highlands of Afghanistan called the Turquoise Mountain, which existed for less than a century before it was destroyed by Oligay Khan, the son of Genghis Khan, in the early 1220s and lost to history. It was Afghanistan's last great indigenous empire, except for the Timurids in the 15th century. There would never really be a civilization quite like it again. Only a few of Sultan Ghiyas al-Din's buildings survived, scattered over a 200-mile area. No one was certain how they related to his empire, which would have stretched from Iraq to India, controlling the Silk Road to China. One of those remaining buildings is named the Minaret of Jam. The Minaret of Jam is a 12th century tower located where the Hadi River meets the River Jam in Shaharak district of Afghanistan, whose highly concealed valley location is aided in protecting the tower. It remains a lasting legacy of a period in which Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived side by side in harmony, uniting their commonalities rather than being divided by their differences, and built a prospering trading empire. The minaret's exterior is decorated with exquisite detail, covered with brick, stucco, precious stones, and glazed tiles, patterned with inscriptions of alternating bands of Hebrew, Kufic, Nashki calligraphy, and geometric patterns with verses of the Quran beyond. The actual dating of the minarets is unclear. Written in Arabic, it could read 1193/4 or 1174/5. The unclear dating makes it difficult to determine the reason that the minaret was erected, but it's speculated it was once attached to a mosque washed away in a flash flood prior to Mongol sieges. The minaret was rediscovered in 1886 by Sir Thomas Holdrych, forgotten again, rediscovered in 1957. Both discoveries inspired hunts for the lost Turquoise Mountain Kingdom, but so far nothing's been found. Next up for number 3 will be Sanxingdui. I'm sorry if I say that wrong. This lost culture is discovered by a farmer by accident in 1929. Reporting the artifacts he kept discovering in his field, excavations finally began in 1986. They immediately revealed the complex sheets and statues of carved jade, tools, jewelry, bronze sculptures, many of which were gigantic, averaging 8 feet tall. But who were the Sanxingdui? Despite the evidence of the culture's artistic abilities, no one really knows. The site shows evidence of being abandoned around 28,000 years ago, and the people left no written records or human remains and only seem to have existed for about 500 years. Currently, the only thing archaeologists and historians alike have to work with is their artifacts. In 2001, another archaeological discovery, the ancient city Jinsha nearby, contained some relics of this community, sparking the belief that perhaps their population resettled in this new city. In 2014, researchers at the annual meeting of American Geophysical Union argued that at around this time, a major earthquake and landslide would have redirected the Minjiang River, which would have cut off the community from water and forced relocation. Still nothing's been confirmed. Down the rabbit hole we go, quite literally for number 2, the underground town. Formerly called Danenkuyu, and while it's not as old as the other famed underground city, Cahokia, it's equally strange. Danenkuyu, located in central Anatolia region of Turkey, remains one of the most extensive underground cities ever discovered and the largest ever excavated in the world, reaching its largest between 500 and 1000 CE. Consisting of tunnels and rooms cut into the region's soft rock more than 85 meters below the Earth's surface, it's a total of 18 levels. Not only does its cave-like rooms stretch on for hundreds of miles, but it's thought to be more than 200 small separate underground cities that have also been discovered in the region, connecting to these tunnels, creating a massive subterranean network. The city's exact date of construction remains contested, but Anabasis, written by Xenophon of Athens circa 370 BCE, is the oldest written work that seems to reference Danenkuyu, where he mentions the Anatolian people in or near the region of Cappadocia living underground in excavated homes rather than the popular cliffside dwellings. So who lived here? Damn near everyone. It was like that property that's been in the family for too long, just swapping hands over generations. It was in your constant use for thousands of years, from the Pyrgons to the Persians to the Christians of the Byzantine era. It was finally abandoned in the 1920s by the Cappadonian Greeks when they faced defeat during the Greco-Turkish War. It was only rediscovered in 1963 when a man who was renovating his home kept losing his chickens. Turned out they found one of the tunnels and were having a great time playing urban explorer. Civilizations are not remembered by their business people, their bankers, or their lawyers. They're remembered by the arts. A quote by Eli Broad that best describes number 1 on the countdown, the Indus Valley, the largest known ancient urban culture, one that stretched from the Indus River of Pakistan to the Arabian Sea and the Ganges in India. This civilization emerged in 3300 BC and flourished until around 1600 BC, when something either murked the entire populace or they resettled somewhere else. During its peak, it had a population of 5 million, which is more than present-day New Zealand. Most of its inhabitants were artisans and traders living in villages, 1,056 of which found and 96 of which have been excavated. The Hedapapans were nothing short of genius. They have actual flush toilets in most of the communities, which would connect to their highly developed sewage and drainage systems for wastewater. They also had functioning showers, pumping fresh water, complete masters of the bathroom. But they also had incredible walls, granaries, irrigation, and buildings. Every city and community was built on the exact same grid system, using the same dimension of mud bricks every time, and everything was measured to scale. Wealthier people had 3-story houses, the everyday person had 2-story houses, but everyone had courtyards and terraces. Their residences, no matter how refined, were made of material that didn't stand the test of time, however. What else? They were the world's first dentists. Scientists found 11 drilled molars from adults who lived between 7,500 and 9,000 years ago in the Indus Valley. They also had the earliest scale to test gold purity, were the first people to domesticate cotton, and they had the world's first buttons and the oldest signboard. But what remains most astonishing is the absence of any central importance, like a palace, altar, a temple. What does that mean? Likely an egalitarian environment, aka all people in the society are equal, no one presides over someone else. In the ways of indigenous cultures, this wasn't uncommon, but to see it executed on such a grand scale, peacefully, without quarry, goes to show that maybe they weren't just advanced for their time, but maybe for ours too. Alrighty, that's the end of another video. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to like and subscribe to see more from us. And until next time, drop a comment below on what cultures you find the most fascinating.